Hey guys, this is Kyle at ProjectionHub, and today I'm going to be talking about if you plan to get an SBA loan, whether that's for a startup or an existing business or an acquisition, any type of SBA loan. If you plan to get one, what are the four most important things that if you don't have these four things figured out, it doesn't really matter the rest of the list of the things you're going to have to do for the SBA loan. Sure, you're going to need more things than four things to get an SBA loan and prepare for that process and the application and all of that. But the four things I'm going to talk about in this video, basically, it's kind of like if you don't have these four figured out, that's what you need to fix before you move on to the rest of the list. These are kind of the deal breakers for every lender, whether they're written rules or not. And I'm going to go into detail on what all four of those are and some things you can do to, calculate them, fix them, and then maybe some resources you can do to help that. So as I mentioned, my name is Kyle. I've been with ProjectionHub now for over 3 years. And before my time with ProjectionHub, I was an SBA loan officer for almost 7 years. And so I was working with startups and existing businesses to, put together their loan application, take that through the process, walk them through underwriting, reviewing their business plans, reviewing their projections, you name it. So a lot of firsthand experience on being the other side of the table from this when reviewing those loans. And who is ProjectionHub? We have helped more than 50,000 startups and small businesses create financial projections for their loan applications, their pitch decks, their internal planning, you name it. We've also have worked with hundreds of businesses to write custom business plans and to guide them through and help them prepare for the SBA loan process. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump in. All right. So along this video, I'm going to, for each of these 4 points, I'm going to try to show you, a resource to help demonstrate this or some sort of source that will help demonstrate the point. That would be useful information for you. So, and yeah, we'll go through these one at a time. So the first one is going to be, and just to remind you, if you are talking to an SBA lender, you go to a bank, they're not going to have these four things on a sign in front of you. You might talk to someone and they say, hey, here's all the things you need for a loan application. And, we've got a checklist we can give you and all that kind of stuff. And that's great. But these are kind of the four early signs that you just need to have a check mark next to these things. Really for you have a shot at getting approval. This isn't going to guarantee approval, but they will be kind of like hard stops if these boxes aren't really checked. So keep that in mind. Okay, the first one is going to be relevant industry experience. Now, what I have open right now is a free business plan template. This is our Med Spa business plan template. I'll link down in the description below, but on our website, we've got, closing in on 100 different industries where we've made these free business plan templates. It's an example for that industry. We've filled it all out. Most of these ones I have a full video walkthrough of how to write the business plan for that industry, but we have these little key points embedded into it. Relevant industry experience is the point number one of the four most important things to have ready for an SBA loan. And that's going to be basically, you want to make sure that your lender, has full confidence that you know what you're doing and you know what you're getting yourself into. So the ways we do that is demonstrate that you have direct experience doing this thing. If you're going to start a spa, in this case, a med spa, do you have prior experience working in a spa, managing a spa, maybe even owning a spa before? That's very applicable experience. So that looks really great, right? You want to include that. If you don't have those, the next best thing might be, do you have transferable skills? So maybe you came from an adjacent industry. Maybe you've worked retail before. Maybe you've worked in a service-based business before. Maybe you've worked in marketing before, so you know how to generate customers. That's what, when we're talking about relevant industry experience, start first with the most applicable experience if it's directly related. Then talk about transferable skills if you have that from prior experience, whether it's managing people, owning a business before. And also you can supplement your experience with, co-owners' experience, key managers' experience. So if you personally don't possess enough of that relevant experience, you have to supplement that. Add a partner to the business that does have that experience, or land a general manager or someone who does have that, has years of experience in that business or that relevant industry. So we basically just want to make sure we're leaving no doubt in the lender's mind that like we're going to be able to do what we say we're going to be able to do. We at least know what we're doing in the business. That's kind of the first major point. You don't want your lender thinking you're going to do like on the job training. And there's a whole bunch of things to being a business owner you will figure out on the fly, but knowing how to actually do the thing you're going to be selling is not something that they want to hear, right? Okay, so make sure you have relevant industry experience. When I was a lender, we all the time had people that would come from a very long career in one thing, and then they wanted to start a business in kind of a passion area, and they just didn't have that super tangible experience. And that was a massive red flag, and it was hard for us to get over that hump a lot of times, that we just didn't know if they knew what they were getting themselves into or if they possessed the skills to be able to execute that thing. So that's key point number one. This is probably the hardest of the four to, if you don't have it, to change that. Because it's just going to take time. That might look like getting a different job. That, again, might be like adding a partner or hiring in that experience. So hopefully you have this one ironed out already, and it's just a matter of telling that story, right? So that should be a very big portion of your business plan. When you're talking to your loan officer, make sure they know that. In your business plan, all the way at the front in your executive summary, when you're introducing this, talk about your ownership experience, that relevant experience. That should be one of your entry points. It's just right out of the gate being like, I know what I'm doing because I've done this X, Y, and Z before. Down here into the operations section, talk again about your experience. Just make sure they know that you know what you're doing. Okay, so that's point number one. Point number two, everyone hates to talk about it, and that's going to be credit score. Whether you love it or hate it, you probably hate it. Credit scores, personal credit scores are the best tool lenders have to be able to gauge how reliable of a borrower you are. They don't know you. You might be a stranger, even if they have a banking relationship with you. There's just nothing else out there for them to be able to base how good are you at like meeting your obligations than a credit score. There's a lot of aspects of the credit score system that aren't fair, and I understand that, but it is the best gauge that people have. So SBA loans, and this is not the SBA's website, this is just a resource that is an expert in SBA loans. They have listed here, and today's video is not to go into detail on all the different types of SBA loan programs. We have other videos for that. But you can see roughly the minimum credit scores for these. Now, I can speak from personal experience. I was an SBA microlender as well as a 7A lender. Technically, for SBA microloans, we didn't have a minimum. Like, we weren't forced to have a minimum by like program standards, but underwriters just have this mental minimum, right? Like when you start to float down in the low 600s and below that, there's a lot of question marks that start to pop up. So the rest of the deal really has to be good collateral, maybe a cosigner, all these different things. So just keep that in mind. Even if you are above these minimums listed here, the closer you are to the minimum, the higher the stakes are in the other aspects of the deal. You got to come up with that strength somewhere else in the deal. So we typically say you need to shoot for over a 650 for a primary, signer on the loan. There's that the line is moving. Different lenders probably have different lines. The SBA does have some hard lines. So for like 7A, for example, they're putting together this score. They give it a bunch of details, and then it calculates a score of the loan. If that score is under a certain level, they can't get it approved. So when we say a minimum credit score, it's less of a minimum credit score and more that the lower that thing gets, it's going to hurt that score that's being calculated. So you just aren't ever going to be able to get it over to the level it needs to be to get approved for the lender. So shoot for 650. As far as repairing credit scores goes, dispute the things that are not accurate. Maybe that's a medical bill that you got resolved, or you disputed it and the hospital agreed you didn't have to pay that thing or whatnot. Make sure that gets off of your credit report. Clean those things up. So make sure the things that actually exist on your credit report, take ownership over those things, try to rectify those things. And sometimes it's just a matter of it takes time for that to rebound. Don't buy into the you pay for this and then your credit score gets better. Those programs are all scams. So just make sure the things that shouldn't be on there get removed, and then stay on top of paying your obligations beyond that. And then just bide your time. But we're shooting for 650 minimum there. The higher that goes, the better it gets. And as I mentioned, you can supplement a less than stellar credit score with a cosigner who has a great credit score. So that might be something you think about too, is a good cosigner is someone who has obviously a solid credit score, someone who has outside income. So their income will not be dependent upon whether this business works or not. And then, obviously that person is, committed to fulfilling their end of the agreement in the event that they would be called on to do that. Okay, so that's number 2. Number 3, SBA loans require at least a 10%, I guess you could call it a down payment. I'm going to do air quotes if you can see me in the camera there. We call this an owner investment. So let's try to simplify this and say you need, also I should have mentioned, you can go to a site like Credit Karma or whatever to get an estimate of what your credit score is. Some people don't like Credit Karma. I think it's a decent tool. If you have Experian, you can do that. If you have a certain credit card, they might give you a report of it, different things, so you can check in multiple places. But we don't have an affiliation with them or anything, just mentioning that is out there. But the third one, at least a 10% down payment. I think I have a tab open. There we go. So typically the requirement is a minimum of 10%. So if you're starting a business and let's say it's going to take $100,000 to get this business up and running, the SBA lender is not going to give you $100,000. They're going to require you to put in $10,000 of that, right? So maybe they'll give you a $90,000 loan, but you're going to have to front the other 10%. So this is the required portion, that minimum required. And I say minimum because some lenders might say 20%. Again, there's a difference between a minimum and what the lender decides they would like to do to get comfortable with the loan. I would say you don't want to just plan for the minimum. Something we're hearing a lot from our lending partners is they want to have a 10% owner investment on the, down payment towards the loan proceeds, but they also want you to have 10% in what's called post-loan liquidity. So for example, I mentioned that $100,000 business. Say you come up with the $10,000, the lender's going to give you $90,000. All that money goes into starting the business off the ground, and you have $0 left afterwards. That would basically mean your margin of error is 0. If people don't show up, if something goes wrong, you're out of money. There's no other option. So some lenders will require a down payment, but then they'll also require, maybe 10% of what was going to be is cash in the bank to be a buffer and kind of help as working capital. You still have to pay for your groceries. So think of it more of 20% or 10% owner investment, 10% post-loan liquidity. That's a decent, healthy thing to shoot for. So that 10% is the minimum requirement on a lot of these loan programs, but just a lot of lenders might want to see that additional percentage on that. So if you don't have the ability, the means, the outlet to get that percentage of the down payment and that post-loan liquidity, that's something you should sort out prior to going through the SBA loan process. You can that money can come from a gift. It can come from an investment. Technically, it can be a loan, but it can't be repaid before the SBA loan is repaid. I wouldn't recommend borrowing your down payment. That's just another debt on top of that. But this is something you should have mapped out prior to going through the process. Okay, and number 4, and this is going to be a I don't want to call it confusing, but it's going to be basically, we need to demonstrate that your business, let's assume it's going to be a startup. You need to demonstrate that it's going to be able to cash flow and have a debt service coverage ratio, DSCR, of 1.25 or higher. Basically what that means, and I'll pull open a set of financial projections here. So we have a bunch of these templates, 150 of them or so on our website, which are industry specific financial projection templates. You can create a set of complete financial projections all by yourself. You just fill in these nice little blue boxes. We have video guides, all that stuff. Free support comes with it. And then it produces all these lovely, my face is kind of covering them, but financial statements and whatnot. And so this tool is going to be really helpful. Obviously, not only is your lender going to require this, that's not the point I'm trying to make. What I'm trying to get to the point of is they're going to do an internal calculation to say, basically, can this business take on the loan and still, can the business still function, add the loan payment to that, and they're still producing enough cash? Like, they don't want the loan to be the reason that the business can't succeed by putting too much pressure on it to repay that. So it could be a startup, could be existing business, could be an acquisition. 1.25 tends to be the industry average. Some lenders, if they're a little bit more strict, or maybe they're tightening up the purse strings a little bit, they might move that 1.35, 1.5. Different industries might have a different weight. But think about it in this way, is for every dollar of debt in the business, the lender would want you to have $1.25 of cash flow, right? So they don't want every dollar that's being cleared by the business to have to go to repaying debt. That's a little too close for comfort for the lender, because if it comes to choosing to pay a certain bill or an employee over making your loan payment, you're going to choose the bill or the employee, just as an example. So they want to make sure that there's a healthy buffer there. And that number is pretty easily calculated, but you're just taking it's like total debt service or total amount of debt, and the payments you're making on that divided by net operating income, right? So your profitability at the end of the day. And so a tool like these projection templates would help you calculate that. I think we've got a library of all types of industries. You can check that out. It's linked down below. There might even be a link down there to get a discount on those. But yeah, 1.25 is typical. You can even see here's a little, example of how that's calculated. But yeah, the higher that number goes, that's the safer bet. That can, if you're an existing business, you can use what your current debt service is, do it divided by net operating income. If you're a startup, that's going to be based off of projections. But yeah, that's not going to be on the lender application. They're not going to say, does your business have a debt service coverage ratio of 1.25 or higher? They're just going to be using that as an internal gauge of like, is this, can we move forward or can we not? Again, this doesn't guarantee your loan's going to get approved. None of these 4 things will guarantee a loan approval, but they will guarantee a loan decline, if that makes sense. So that's what I'm hoping to help you avoid. If you've got these 4 things in place, that should increase your chances to move forward with your loan application. Give yourself a good shot. That way it'll come down to more of the minutia and the details rather than these big things that they were wanting to check to make sure are in order. So yeah, those are the 4 things. First one was relevant industry experience. Second one was credit score at 650 or above. Third one was a 10% owner investment and a 10% post-loan liquidity. And then the fourth one was you want to show that the business can cash flow and cover the loan payment with a debt service coverage ratio of 1.25 or higher. If you have any questions about any of that, leave a comment down in the video below. Feel free to contact us directly at support@ProjectionHub.com. We're very responsive. We'd be happy to answer any questions for you. And if you need any help with your projections or your business plan or finding an SBA lender or preparing for an SBA loan, that's what we do best. So reach out. We would be happy to help you however we can. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing to the channel. And yeah, we'll catch you on the next video. Thanks.